as an architect, I know that you care very much about aesthetics and investing in these like blue collar neighborhoods.
Yep.
Talk to me about, what you were thinking when you were buying in one of these neighborhoods, one of these like junker homes. Did you have to overcome a certain level of like, well, this isn't really for me, it's for something else?
Yes, the truth is yes. I think one of the kind of serendipitous things that happened was I bought it when it was covered in snow.
Mm.
So I couldn't see how junky it actually was. And then it all melted and I was like, oh my gosh, what have I bought? This is terrible. And not only what have I bought, but like what is around me? Like, yes, it's in the wilderness and there's like nature around, but there's also other houses. And there were some that were pretty junky. And I got pretty nervous, but at that point I had also gutted it. And so I couldn't, I mean, I was going to lose money and I just was like committed at that point. And it was one of the best decisions ever, but there was a period where I was very nervous about what I had bought and because I ended up putting more into it than what I actually paid for it. But, I learned that when I was photographing for Airbnb, you could be selective about what photos you showed. Like I learned how to make it work.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you also learn what people care about and what they don't care about. And, short-term rentals, they're there for 3 or 4 days. And even if there's something that annoys them,
Mhm.
they're gone quickly. And it was really, I recently sold that one and the neighborhood, what I was doing, a lot of other people were doing as well. I just didn't know it when I initially bought it. I was kind of one of the earlier ones in there. And later, I mean, actually, Greg talks about this a lot with a lot of the neighborhoods around the downtown area, right?
Mhm.
There's a lot of neighborhoods that have a ways to go before they totally change over, but now's the time to get in with them. And that was, if I had tried to buy the house that I bought in the condition that it was in when I bought it now, it would cost me 4x what I paid for it. And so, it was a little bit of a leap of faith, but in the end, that's typically what good investing is.
Yeah. Yeah.
You've got to take a little bit of a chance on it.
That is interesting that you bring that piece up, and definitely a sign that you've been listening, right? Because we've been hitting on that pretty hard, right? This idea that it's real easy to jump in when everybody is already knowing it, but like the real kind of like golden moment is that moment where not everybody knows it, but there's enough momentum where where the insiders can see it.
Yep.
And comparing this idea that you bought a kind of like a junker house by a lake when Airbnb was starting to take hold and it
Yep.
had a built-in clientele, right? Like when you describe this like little house that is also in an aesthetically beautiful place, but it's not exactly the perfect house. I'm like, dude, I was the exact customer for that.
Well, that's exactly right. I knew it was an hour and 10 minutes from the city. And in New York, there's people that have money. And they love the idea of curated spaces. And but the thing is, there's also, so there are the very wealthy in New York.
Yeah.
There's also people that aspire to be wealthy, or just, blue collar families that still want nice things.
Yeah.
And I was able to design a house that you could rent it for a couple that wanted to get a weekend away and it was still affordable, or a family that had, 5, 6 kids that wanted, or had a bachelorette party or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so there was that risk mitigation of what's the biggest, I want to get a big audience, but I also don't want the base price to be so expensive that the average person can't afford it,
Yeah.
And so
I'm glad you used the word risk mitigation, because that's what was going through my head, right? Like it's this idea of, yes, there will always be a luxury market and a mid-luxury market, but there's like this like sweet spot of risk mitigation of kind of what you just said. Somebody with money that just wants to get away to somewhere simple, or someone that's like aspiring to have money soon. So they need, that's the best that they can do, right? Like it's like that beautiful in between spot of where your property is for the short-term piece of it, right? Like for the short-term piece of like filling it, making sure that it cash flows, but then also the aha of getting on the front end of a wave that is clearly coming, and riding that thing is a beautiful parallel, man. Thanks for drawing that. That's awesome.
Yeah, for sure.